Well, it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Mike Horne. Mike and I have known each other for several years, although we haven't known that we've known each other, because we both worked at a place called the Benyon Teton Boys Ranch. Mike was a camper there, and you worked there, right? And I've since been involved in several other nonprofit boys ranches, which I could tell you more about. They mean a lot to me. They changed my life, and I think they changed a lot of boys' lives. But, if you want to ask Mike about corn dogs or getting troughed or any of that stuff, maybe that's a question for the Q&A. Mike got his start at Wasatch Advisors, a Utah investment firm with $15 billion under management. After 2 years in their research department, he got the entrepreneurship bug and has since started 6 companies, expanded 2 to multiple states, and raised capital and eventually sold 3 of them. Through all of his startup experience, he realized that he's at his best working with small teams and helping businesses scale and raise capital, and less interested in running them once they scale. A very important thing to learn. So he stopped going into business for himself and started coaching companies through their own raise efforts. Mike has successfully raised millions of dollars in angel and seed rounds from venture capital institutions. So please welcome Mike Horne.
I'm going to talk to them about pitching and timing and stuff like that. How long when they do the pitch competition? I don't want to screw up anything.
About 3 minutes.
3? Yeah. All right, here we go. Oh boy. All right. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, guys. That introduction, because I'm a psychopath, because if you want to start your own company, you kind of have to be a little nuts. Because I'm a psycho, I'm actually on company number 9 at this point. 4 exits, 3 failures, and a couple still going. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about because my specialty is actually in raising money. I understand what Bruce, we're talking about bootstrapping. This is one of the first things that's kind of been brought up, and it's really important. But as you go through it, I like to say there's steps, and then there's a couple different things. So you do this thing with your company, and it's like, idea. That's horrible handwriting. I apologize, and nobody's going to be able to see that. But then you have to figure out how to do an MVP. Then you have to go from MVP. You have to kind of get some sort of attraction, something anywhere. Then you got to scale, right? Oops, SCALE. I got my L way in front of me. You have an idea. Then you have an MVP. MVP, minimum viable product, right? So you've got to figure out like something that works. I want to sell pens, whatever. We'll just use, doesn't matter. We'll use pens. Okay, well, you've got to build a pen. That's the MVP, the minimum viable product, actually something that works, right? Then from there, you've got to gain traction, which means, okay, does anybody even want to buy what it is I'm selling? Then go try to sell 1 or 2 of them, right? Or try to go sell 100 million of them, of course. But like, you got to get some sort of traction, and then you've got to scale from there. Now, here's the problem I think that happens is usually somewhere in here. So this is kind of where you're at bootstrap. And I don't want to mess up any curriculum or anything like that.
We try to get them to MVP. That's what we try to.
Okay, good. But you got to usually go to idea and then you kind of get to MVP, and that's kind of a bootstrapping thing, right? Then after that, you've got to hit traction somewhere, either here or here. You've got to raise money, and when you got to raise money, that means you got to pitch somebody, which means you got to find somebody who's rich, or you got to find an institution that has a lot of money to give you their money, and that's difficult. There are some things that, and this is what I do now for a living. The problem is usually somewhere in this neighborhood, you've seen a movie like The Social Network or something like that. Where you're like, oh, what I do is I go out and I find, some institution, and then I tell them how amazing I am, and then they just give me $100 million. That's not how it works. Raising money is almost impossible. It happens. I have helped over 270 companies raise over $250 million over the last 7.5 years. So it happens, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. And part of the thing you have to understand is the first amount of money that you're going to raise from somebody, and this is what I'm going to talk about today mostly, is raising money. The first amount of money that you're going to raise is probably going to be from somebody that you know who is rich. Surprise, surprise. It's not going to be from an institution. It's almost never that. And that's what they call an angel, right? So you got an angel right here. So usually somewhere in this neighborhood, you're going to get an angel. First and foremost, it's probably going to be a rich family member. And that's the easiest way to do it. And I'd say go for that if you can. I have not raised money from rich family members. I've had to go out and find other people that I knew, who I knew had money, and then raise money from them. When you do that, there's a couple of other things, or I'm going to go through kind of a list of things that I think are going to be the way to start structuring how you're going to get the fundraising. But one of the things that's really, really difficult as you're raising money from angels is you're not just competing against other businesses. If you're raising money again in an institutional way, which usually means 5 million plus, which you're probably not going to do at this, stage right after the MVP. I mean, maybe even here, like you might be raising some money here too. You might need, you might need somebody to give you 50 grand or 100 grand or something. If you're raising money from an institution, you're competing against other businesses. If you're raising money from an angel, you're competing against a car or a boat. That's what's difficult. Because you're not saying, I need to be the best business idea out there that they're listening to. You have to say, I've got to convince them to not buy another cabin. I've got to convince them to give me $500,000. That's hard, but possible. So that's one of the first things I would say to keep in mind as you're raising money in this kind of early stage stuff is don't always think that you're competing against other. Can I erase Wasatch or no? Can you just erase? Okay, let's do this. Yeah. Oh. No, it's fine. Okay, sorry. So when you're pitching, you got 5 things you really got to do. Product, or you got to explain product, market, team, traction, and deal structure. I've got awesome handwriting, by the way, so I apologize if nobody can read any of that. But all right, and here's the worst part. And this is, there's pitch competitions and other things that you're going to do that are going to have certain time limits and things. But generally speaking, if you're in a meeting with somebody and you're actually trying to get them to give you money, you got about 10 minutes before they start looking at their phone. Now, I've been in 1,000 pitch meetings, maybe more. I don't know, a lot. And what you see, it's really interesting. This is my job, is to teach my clients that after about 10 minutes, no matter how interesting you think that you are, you're going to start seeing a lot of investors start doing this. And when that's the case, you're toast. So you've got to be able to get at least everything out there and be interesting enough. And you got 10 minutes to do it. And if that's the case, then they're going to ask meaningful questions. And we're going to go through each one of these things. But then the last thing I'm going to say here is avoid stupid questions. So, all right, here we go. So, product. What is it you're doing? I've got a pen. I mean, that's so dumb. But I could think of a client, but I don't want to be inappropriate. So, I've got a pen. Okay, why is the pen meaningful? Because you can write with it. Why do you need to write? Because people need to be able to communicate and they need to write things down. So you're talking about the product in the first little bit of what you're talking about, okay? Next thing, the market. Well, is there anybody out there that needs or wants the thing that I'm selling? Once again, the traction, the little stepladder thing that I did before. You have to be able to talk about the market. One of the things that you're going to see a lot in pitch deck, that I see all the time in pitch decks, and I'm sure if anybody here has a pitch deck or is going to do a pitch deck, is they're going to do what's called a TAM, SAM, SOM slide. TAM, total addressable market, SAM, serviceable addressable market, SOM, serviceable obtainable market, okay? That's a slide that I hate, and that's a slide that needs to be there. It's almost meaningless, but everybody's going to expect a TAM, SAM, SOM slide. How big is the market? Well, I've got some dental something that I've figured out. I don't know what, I'm just thinking about a past client. Okay, well, how big is the dental market? Well, you're not selling to the dental market. So as you're going through these things and you're talking about your product needs to make sense in a deck, it needs to make sense. But when you connect to the market, this is one of the things that I tell all of my clients, because you have to explain how big the market is. So it's like, hey, I'm gonna go sell lemonade at a lemonade stand. Well, how big is the market? I don't know, I think I can make $50 a day. And it's like, cool, here's $100 million. Like, it's not gonna happen, right? So you gotta make sure that when you're talking about the market, when you talk about the product and you connect to the market, you also talk to, and this is how I build slide decks, is you talk about the business, I'm sorry, not opportunity, the business, the operations, I don't know. You talk about like how, this is how much this thing costs. This is how I'm going to do things. So like what's going on in the operations of the business. So that way, when you go from product to market, you can say, oh, can you see how if I'm selling this for $50 and I do it 100 times or 100 million times or whatever it is, then the market is the size that it is because I've already explained the way that the business works. So product and market. And if you do those things, you connect those two things together, then you're going to have some, because every Tam Sam Som slide you'll ever see, and I'm sure you guys are going to see plenty of them or build some of them. Every one of those is going to be like some gigantic number and then some slightly less gigantic number and then some number that's 150 million bucks. Every one of them. They all are. I can predict it every single time, every time I hear a pitch deck. And it ends up being meaningless if your market is just, it looks like everything else. How many of these pens are you going to sell? 11 billion. Okay, cool. So you can make, it doesn't matter. So making sure that product and then going into the way that the business dealings work and then going into the market, then the market slide, when you talk about that to an investor, it's meaningful and they can go, oh, I can understand how it is you can get to $100 million or $50 million or whatever, right? So, but those are the two really important things. And I'll say this as well before I move on to team. Every entrepreneur I see before I start working with them, 60 or 70% of their slide deck is product. And it's a huge mistake. You're going to get clobbered if it is. Because nobody cares. I need to know all of these things, and you got 10 minutes to do it, so you better be balanced with everything that you're doing when you're talking through a slide deck, when you're raising money. Team. In my opinion, the most important piece of any investment, if I'm going to make an investment in a company, that's the thing that matters the most for me. Because you can have some stupid ideas. People can have dumb ideas like hula hoops, pet rocks, Crocs, big dumb cups. What are those? The Stanleys, the stupid. I hate those things. I'm sure there's probably some in here, but they're dumb. But they make a freaking ton of money because the team can pull it off. The marketing guy who was the marketing guru for Crocs, which by the way, I don't own and I hate. And if you own them, and my girlfriend has them, and so I have to pretend that I don't think that they're horrible. But like, the marketing guy for Crocs is the same marketing guy for the new Stanley Cups. They're just big dumb cups. There's one right there. I can see it. And they make hundreds of millions of dollars. It's brilliant. Because they know what they're doing. Because the team, that's what it is. If the team can pull it off, then that's everything. So when you do a team slide, it's really interesting to be like, well, and Russell's like, Mike and this and that and all these other things. The truth of the matter is, he gave me a little introduction. The fact of the matter is that like, I've been there. I've done that. I have had to, and I'm trying to scare you guys off from being entrepreneurs because you guys have to know how hard it is. You're not an entrepreneur until you've fired a family member and put a payroll on your personal credit card. You're just not. It's just hard. But if you've been there and done that and you've shown that that's the case, then the team is what makes big dumb cups and big dumb hats and pumpkin spice. And I love pumpkin spice stuff, by the way. It's not like a criticism, but like, just dumb. It's stupid things, and it makes hundreds of millions of dollars. You can do that as long as the team makes sense. So as you're going through the team, make sure that not only you're bringing together a team of your peers as you're working on things that has those expertises, that's not a word, but has the expertise. But make sure that when you're explaining that in a deck, it's clear and concise enough that people understand that we can actually pull this off. Because that's really what it comes down to. For me, I invested in a virtual reality chair that swivels around. It's called Roto VR, but like, I don't have a VR. That's not my thing. I have one in my house now because I invested in them and he sent me one, but it's not my thing. But I know that the guy, his name is Elliot, I know that he knows what he's doing and I can tell. And so it's like, okay, the team makes more sense to me than almost anything else. So therefore, that's the most important thing in my opinion. And for a lot of investors is, do they trust that you can pull it off? So when you're talking about team and pitch decks and you're raising money, you've got to make sure that you have the confidence and give the confidence off that you know what you're talking about. Now, traction and deal structure are actually combined. So traction. It can, I mean, at very early stage, and this is my guess, is that, I mean, I doubt many of you guys have many businesses already under your belt. Maybe you do, I don't know. But, you know, if we're talking about this right now and we're at a college class, then probably you don't. Traction can mean not just sales. It can mean LOIs, letters of intent. If you have a letter of intent with somebody, it can mean almost anything, but it's just some proof. Proof that not only the market is there, because you can say that the market's there, but proof that you can execute on making sure that you can attract the market. I'm actually going to say one more thing that, actually, I'm going to put this over here because this is absolutely one of the things that pisses me off the most. And I'm sorry, I by the way, I swear a lot, and I haven't sworn yet, but like, it's really hard for me not to swear. So if I say a swear word, I apologize. I can? Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. Percentages. When you're talking about market, by the way, in traction, never use percentages. Well, we can get 5% of the market. Yeah, well, no, that doesn't mean anything. If you don't have an execution strategy that you've been able to explain through the market, or the product and the market where it's going, because it's like, I can get 5% of the market. No, yeah, okay. I'm going to get 5% of the world's whatever market. You can just say that it's just a percentage. You have to be able to say, I can get 500 of these things sold per month. And this is the proof that I can do it. And then you can put together with the traction, like just an actual, just a number, just an actual number. So when you're talking about traction as you're raising money, and everybody does it. I mean, when I say that, I mean, I listen to 20 pitch decks a week. And every single one of them has all the same things and all the stupid things that I'm talking to you guys about. But it's like, why do you use percentages? That doesn't mean anything to me. What are you going to do to go get 10 sales, 50 sales, 100 sales? How can you prove to me that the sales make sense? And then when I've seen product cost and everything like that, then I can understand how you're going to get to the market. And it makes me feel like, okay, I have some confidence that you even know what the hell you're talking about. Pardon. Ooh, there we go. There's a first swear word. So with the traction slide, that's what you're doing. Use numbers, don't use percentages. But what is the proof that I have? And once again, it looks like there's just 5 slides. I mean, usually you can have 10 slides. I've seen good pitch decks with 15 slides or 30 slides. I mean, it just depends on how you're going through it. So once again, the most important thing is it has to feel comfortable to you. But if you're talking about, with the traction slide, do numbers, don't do percentages. And then the last thing, which connects up with the traction, is the deal structure. So typically speaking, once again, I haven't talked to any of you guys personally about what businesses you're starting up, but for me, it would be, grab 50 grand from somebody that you know, put together an MVP, bootstrap type of a thing, or put together your own money, or whatever you need to do. Get kind of somewhere where it's actually a thing, and then I'd go out and raise $1 million at a $5 million valuation. And it doesn't mean you can sell your company for $5 million, because who the heck's going to buy your stupid company for $5 million? Because you probably haven't sold squat. But that's what the market out there says. So the other thing is, and the market shifts. You could raise a lot more money a lot easier with a lot bigger valuation off of less. 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I helped a company raise $6 million at a $50 million valuation. And even with the growth they have now, I doubt they could do that again today. And they've been growing for 2 years. So part of it is understanding the market and what's going on out there. But like, it's kind of what I want to do is, I know I'm kind of all over the place with this, but it's like bootstrap, and then you go 1 at 5. And that's what's happening right now in the market. That's what I'm helping people raise. And then really it's 5 at 20. And this is million, okay? So once again, you got to get through the first little step. But then if you're looking at things, what you're thinking about as you're moving forward into raising money, and what you don't want to do is get yourself to a position where you can't raise the money because of your cap table. Am I way over?
Well, I was going to ask, can you explain a little about valuation?
Okay.
So how do you get to a $5 million valuation? What,
Do you want the honest answer, or do you want me to give him a really academic answer? And once again, I'm apologizing because I don't know how far, if I'm like just launching over.
Some of it might be a little.
Okay. Evaluation. It's not an evaluation. Evaluation is what is the value of the company. So I'm selling my car, and the value of the car is whatever, 10 grand or whatever it is, right? That's a valuation of your company. So what is your company worth, and what somebody is willing to pay for it? So when I say valuation, it's not an evaluation. And some people, you can go out and spend money. You can go out and spend 12 to 15 grand having a consultant come in and tell you what your company is worth. The truth of the matter is it's not worth diddly squat until somebody buys it. It's not. It just isn't. But your valuation is what it is that you're saying your company is worth when you're trying to raise money. So if I'm raising $1 million, 1 million out of $5 million valuation, I'm raising $1 million, which means I'm giving up 20% of my company. Does that make sense? So that's like the valuation. And really what you're looking at is every time you got to go out and raise money, really? I mean, except for maybe the first little bit of money that you're getting with bootstrapping, things like that, you basically got to give up about 20% of your company. That's just how it goes. So what can you justify as, once again, the valuation? But this is the deal structure part. What can I justify? Well, do you have an MVP? Is it out there? Are you making any sales? Do you have a team? Are you doing some other things that are like actually working? If the answer is yes, you might be able to justify a $5 million valuation, which is nuts. But it doesn't make you a millionaire, for the record, because you can't spend valuation. What you can spend is other people's money, but you can't spend valuation, right? But that's what a valuation is. It is what it is that what somebody is willing to pay to be a part of your company. Actually, maybe I should pause. Is there any other questions? I want to make sure I'm not going way over anybody's head. Everybody just bored out of their minds? We're good? We're bored out of our minds? That's it. Yeah. He's like, yeah, we are. Okay. All right. So anyways, deal structure, that would be like, the deal structure would be, what is it? It's 1 at a $5 million valuation. So I'm giving up 20% of my company for $1 million. And that's maybe what you've seen on like Shark Tank or whatever, right? So those are the things you got to go through, but you got 10 minutes to do it, and you've got to be balanced, which is really hard to do. And is not something that happens all the time. In fact, it happens rarely until like if I work with somebody, because they're like all product, a tiny bit of market, then quick team traction deal structure. And it's like, no. You got to balance out when you're doing it, and you got 10 minutes to do it. So the last thing, this other thing here is this, stupid question. So what is it that you're trying to do? What you're trying to do is you're trying to avoid stupid questions, because at the end, I mean, if you got 30 minutes to talk to some rich dingleberry who's going to maybe give you $1 million, which is crazy, they're going to ask questions. But when they ask questions, what you want to do is avoid stupid questions. So as you're going through your deck as well, and as you're going through the fundraising process, what you're trying to make sure that you're doing is, if there's going to be a question that pops up that's going to be silly, I'm using a bad example, but like the pen, it's like, will the pen dry out if you don't put the cap back on? It's like, of course it will, idiot. Like, why are we asking that question, right? But like, questions get asked that are stupid questions all the time. Secondarily, the other problem is, so you want to avoid stupid questions that are going to take up the limited amount of time that you have after you present for 10 minutes. So making sure you look through that, you look through your deck, you keep that in mind. The other thing that you have to make sure that you do is not let them feel silly, which is crazy. But like, as an example, when I'm on pitch calls with investors, and it happens almost every time, and it's like the thing that I'm trying to avoid the most and can't ever do it, which is make sure that when they hang up, So if and everything now is like virtual and Zoom calls, like nobody gets together much anymore. But so if I'm on a Zoom call, client, investor, they talk, we hang up. I call the investor. So what'd you think? And almost inevitably they go, well, it's really interesting, but, and then they'll bring up some question. And I'm like, why didn't you just ask the question when the CEO of the company was on the phone 10 seconds ago? Just ask that question. And they feel silly because they feel like they don't know what they're talking about because it's something out of their realm. So it's keeping in mind that as well as you're explaining things to investors, like you have to be able to anticipate, which is, once again, this is really hard to do, but you have to try to anticipate what are the questions they're going to be too embarrassed to ask. Because if they don't ask the question, they will assume the worst. They always will. Because it's always easier to just buy a Ferrari. Well, this company kind of makes some sense, or I could just go buy a boat. And if you don't make it that easy and simple, guess what they're going to buy? A boat. Not 20% of your company. That's just how it goes. And it's so all those things in 10 minutes, avoiding stupid questions, and then suddenly you look at your bank account and there's $1 million in it. Russ.
Can you give an example of a situation maybe where you've heard people present well and they've anticipated the questions, or an example of where, like, literally an investor asked some silly question and you're like, why didn't you just ask?
There's been, let me think about the last investor roundtable I presented. There was a company that well, and I do want to keep in mind that I have NDAs and stuff like that with some of my clients, and so I'm trying to be kind. Oh, this is a long time ago, so I can use this company. So there's a company called Hitched, and it was they were fine. I mean, essentially what they were doing is they were taking fracking equipment that would, so down in Texas, you're pulling up oil and you get these huge $60 million machines or whatever like that. You pull up oil, and then when they're done, they just sit there out in fields. It's kind of like, I mean, you'll see some, out here, you'll see track hose and things where you're just like, this is a huge piece of machinery, just sit there. And so their whole thing was they would find these and then they would put them on an online basis or on an online marketplace and then rent them out. So it's like, oh, okay, sweet. Instead of just sitting here for the next 5 years, I can actually have somebody come in, pull the machine away, and I can make 100 grand, doing it. And they presented it super well because it was very, very simple to say, there's the problem. This is what's happening. This is what's out there. I mean, you guys can already probably understand, like, it makes perfect sense. And that was a very simple way to explain it. And they would do that very, very well, right? And then another company that just blew it was a cybersecurity company, which the guy is really smart, and the CEO has made millions of dollars already in the cybersecurity business. So the team, it was like a perfect team. Oh, and by the way, that Hitched company, totally bankrupt now. Raised $5 million, gone. It's gone. It's over. Poor guys. Actually, you might know the guy because he was a Benyon dude, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, it's really funny. Yeah, really funny. But that company's toast. But then there's this other company that is a cybersecurity company, and the guy has made millions of dollars in cybersecurity as the CEO of another cybersecurity company. And it's like, it's so obvious that you ought to be able to, the team thing, you're like, clearly you're the right guy with the right track record and everything like that. And then he got on a pitch with a bunch of investors. And then when he got done, I called up one of the investors, like, I don't know what the hell that company does. I have no idea, even after I worked with them. So it's really interesting how even if you work with people, it's like they have to understand what you do within the product is also, I'm just going to throw these two things out there. The product is problem and solution, right? Really what you're explaining. Problem, solution. Well, I should write the whole thing out. Because if you just start talking about what it is that you have, but you don't understand, like, there's a problem, which is what? People want to be able to write stuff. And it's a problem because they can't. I mean, you guys have seen Leonardo DiCaprio movie, I'm sorry, what's it called? Wolf of Wall Street. The Wolf of Wall Street, where he's like, sell me this pen. And the one guy just grabs a pen and goes, do you have a pen? And he goes, hey, write my phone number down. He goes, well, I can't, I don't have a pen. He goes, well then, here's, give me a buck. Problem, I can't do something. Solution, this is the solution, I have that solution. It's really simple, but like, if you do that, that's the thing, which is where the cybersecurity company, I think, is going to be successful. And I think some of the people that I know who invested in Hitched, which was a really good presentation, actually should have invested in the cybersecurity company, but they didn't. They haven't raised a dime. The other company raised $5 million, and now they're bankrupt. So that's, I mean, the point of kind of where I'm going with that is, I mean, you have to know what you're doing. I mean, the company has to make sense. It has to have a problem and a solution, and you figure those things out. But if you can't articulate that well, it doesn't even matter if you're a good company. It actually doesn't, which is nuts. It blows my mind still to this day. And I'm 9 companies in. I've been doing this for my entire career essentially, and I've helped all these hundreds of companies raise hundreds of millions of dollars. It almost doesn't matter if it's a good company to raise money. You got to be able to articulate it well and then execute it. And please don't just go lose people's money. Like, be a good person and like, make it work. But like, that's such an interesting, if you articulate it well, you'll raise money. It's hard, but you can. And then just don't go blow it. And I've blown it. I mean, I have a couple failures under my belt too. So that's really hard. So that's a lot of stuff here, and whatever. And I don't have questions or anything that anybody has about, I don't know, raising money, pitch decks, and kind of how that stuff works. You raising your hand, or are you asleep? Oh, he's asleep.
So when you're saying like, for example, like 20%, like the one at 5, does that mean like, let's say the business is valued at 5 million?
Yes.
You're gonna have to have investors basically buy 20% of your sellers million?
Yeah. So when you go out and raise money, I mean, and this is the thing is once again, if you have, super friendlies, like people who is like, oh, I've got a rich uncle or something like that, a rich aunt, that might be different. Or rich dad, or you have some money, or whatever it is, right? That's like the bootstrapping thing. It's like, that's kind of like, okay, just grab some money, find something here, find something there, and call it good. But when you go out and actually do, really, this is like okay. And once again, guys, I also do apologize for not having, I'm not teaching a class, so I don't have a perfect understanding of where knowledge is, and so I'm kind of going a million miles an hour. But this is a seed round, really. Raising $1 million at a $5 million valuation. So give me $1 million, and I'm going to give you 20% of ownership in my company. That's what that is, right? So it's a seed round. That's what the market out in the in the raising money marketplace. That's kind of what's happening right now. It was a little higher, but it's kind of come down. But then a Series A. And they got the dumbest names ever, by the way, for raising money. Like, they don't make any sense. They're nonsensical. But also, as you're going out and raising money, the first thing I would do, even though this is a seed round, this would be a Series A, and there's like a Series B, and there's like a Series C, and then you go public or whatever. Like, usually you get bought somewhere in between there. But instead of thinking about these so much, go out and say, okay, I gotta raise $1 million. How much money do I actually need to execute my strategy? And if it's $1 million, then it's $1 million, right? If it's $2 million, then it's $2 million. It is what it is, right? But it's kind of like the first real kind of money that you go out and raise. When you do that, though, you just keep in mind that really what you're doing is giving up 20% of your company, or trying to justify the valuation of what's going on there. And that's just kind of what the market bears. When you're talking to investors, that's just kind of what they're expecting, okay? So one at a $5 million valuation, then it's your job with all of this stuff to justify the $5 million valuation. It's 20% is what you're giving up. And every time you go out and raise, really, up until the point where you're, when you're Facebook, up until the point where it's what something is bananas, and it's like way past any of this stuff, you got to give up 20%. And the other thing I will say is the reason I'm covering this up a little bit is that's what they're called, but I would avoid those things. Because what happens if you're like, I'm going to go out and raise a seed round, $1 million or $5 million, and you go out and raise $100,000 instead of $1 million? Well, then the next time you go out and raise money, someone's gonna say, well, it sounds like you screwed the pooch. You know what I mean? Like you blew it. Well, what happened? So if you go, nah, I'm just not gonna give it a label until I've raised money. And that sounds so crazy, but like really, if you do that, then you can be like, oh, that was just a friends and family round. That was just, just some buddies that I had come in and I raised 100 grand. So I always, until you actually do and once again, we don't even need to talk about that. I'll let Russ and everybody else talk about Series A's because that's a whole other ball of wax. I don't even want to open up the can. But I would just suggest go out. This is what I'm trying to raise. See what you get. Try to get it all. And then afterwards, you can label it. Because on the next round that you're going to raise, because you're probably going to have to raise more than one, then you're like, oh, that was just did a quick, round or whatever like that. The last thing I will say is this too. My goodness, I'm so sorry if I'm going way over everybody's head, but I'm going to use bridge round. Russ, have you ever raised a bridge round?
Nope.
Good. That's why you don't suck. Anytime anybody says the word bridge, an investor goes, uh-oh, where did you mess up? But bridge rounds are all over the place, which is really like it's a round of, I just need a couple $100,000 to get to this next space to bridge the gap. What that means is somewhere down the line, I messed up bad and I'm in trouble and I don't know how to make payroll. So I would just also say that anytime I hear a company that's like, oh, I need a bridge round of financing. So what did you do to screw the pooch? You're toast. You're already toast. You don't even need it. You go get a job. Seriously. I mean, that sounds so rude, but like at that point, it's like, uh-oh. Uh-oh, you're in trouble. All right, any other questions? I got in the back and then we'll go Russ. Okay, student first. No, you, sorry. Blue shirt.
Yeah, I have a question regarding that page. So I didn't fully understand how we could bridge between product and market.
How to bridge between product and market?
How to, when I'm doing a page, how to change the subject from product to market.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Why is my brain spacing it? It's not execution. It's called execution strategy. So really what you want to do is you go, here's the problem, here's the solution, and then right before you hit market, you kind of want to go business. Oh, it's business strategy. This strategy. GY. My goodness. I am awesome at being an entrepreneur, not super good at spelling or writing. So business strategy. So that's what you want to do. So you want to be able to make sure that as you're explaining it, before you hit the market, so that the market slide isn't just a bunch of big numbers that sound cool. You have to say, I am selling this thing at this price, and I can get, this amount of revenue. So and nothing's free. So I mean, you can make the argument like SaaS companies can kind of be free. And I've had a couple of SaaS companies. Well, like this pen costs something to manufacture, but you can sell it for, let's just call it $1, but it costs you 5 cents to make. So then you kind of put together the numbers. Usually I like to have like a number slide around there talking about the business strategy, which is I buy materials for 5 cents. I turn it into a thing I can sell for $1. And then therefore I got to sell a bunch of these. And then that creates my market. So the business strategy, I don't want to go too deep. Goodness gracious, I could go so deep on this stuff, but that's kind of what you want to do is business strategy. Okay, so you want to go business strategy. This is how I'm selling. This is what I'm buying. This is what I'm doing. This is the product that comes out. This is why every time I sell one of these things, I make 99 cents instead of 1 penny worth of materials or whatever. Okay, so business strategy. That's the best way to kind of put it. Russ, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Mike, what one piece of advice could you give to these future entrepreneurs in terms of trying to meet investors? How do they find these people? How do they talk to people? Because for a lot of them, I'm guessing they're kind of feeling like, I don't even know how to approach somebody that has this kind of money.
Well, you get it together. There's one of the things that's really helpful, and I would actually recommend for every first-time entrepreneur is an incubator. Or an accelerator. Sorry, accelerator. I think incubators are kind of garbage, but that's my own personal opinion. But accelerators, if you just look up accelerators, they're all over the place. And what they'll do is they'll give you they select some people, but they'll give you 50 grand or 20 grand, or I don't know what, it depends on what's out there. I mean, the biggest one, if you can get into, what's the one? Sorry, Russ. What's the one in Silicon Valley that it's the biggest one? My business partner went there. I'm spacing it right now. It's you know what I'm talking about, right? Y Combinator. If you can get into a Y Combinator, do it. You're going to be set. You're going to raise $6 million or $100 million or whatever. But find these accelerators. I mean, that's a wild one. But if you can get it, I mean, that's hard to get into as well. But if you can find these accelerators, I mean, in this class is going to be a really good thing to not only learn stuff, but also, have a company, have a business, then go into an accelerator, then go into another one, and they'll introduce you to some entrepreneurs. And they're going to teach you, it really, the accelerators are built around kind of the things that I've been talking about today. They're built around kind of teaching you that, and they'll have a little bit of other stuff in there. But that's going to be a lot more about fundraising, and it's going to get you a fresh start, or I mean, a good jump start to try to kind of understand that. So accelerators are good resources as well, and they're not insanely difficult to get into. You have to apply to a few, but you can probably get into one. That's a good way to do it.
Thanks, Mike. That's our time.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.